We'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Fleckner.
Here.
Mr. Volas.
Here.
Mr. Sarah.
Here.
Mr. Dalpays.
Here.
Mr. McLeister.
Here.
First item on the agenda, consider the August 28th, 2019 meeting minutes for approval.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Yes.
Mr. Sarah.
Yes.
Mr. Volas.
Yes.
Mr. Dalpays.
Abstain.
Mr. McLeister.
Yes.
Thank you. Are you okay? You're picking everything up? Again, remind you to speak into the microphone for the recorder. Next item on our agenda, 19 NCB PC 00013, a General Real Estate Holdings LLC zoning amendment application to change zoning from two-family residential RF2 to office building use OB for the property located at 330 Schneider Street Southeast. Is there someone here representing that request?
Hello. I'm assuming this is where I stand, right? First time.
Speak directly.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm Ryan Berry. I am the owner of It's Global Real Estate Holdings, LLC. I purchased the building at 330 Schneider on 12/8 of 17, under the assumption it was a office building. It's been used as an office building for 64 years now. It was built in 1955. There's 3 half baths. Doesn't even have a full bathroom. After purchase, came to find out that it's zoned as RF2, multifamily. It's in there's duplexes are next to it and residential, but there are office buildings up and down Schneider Street. So it's a 4-unit office building, so there's 4 separate access points, and like to get it rezoned so that we can utilize it as office space versus turning it into some kind of multifamily. I don't know, am I supposed to read through this stuff?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let's see here. I think there's dentist office, Dr. Bernard's old office is down the street, Knott Corporation. There's United Realty across the street, almost directly across. Dr. Osborne, dentist down the street. So there's plenty of office building classifications on Schneider already. We had it surveyed, and everything's attached here. There's photos of the building, and we notified, I worked with Pat DiOrio and Martin Van Gundy to get a list of everybody within 200, I think it's 200 feet of the 2 parcels there, so that they could be notified of the proposed change. So.
Just for the, I don't think you're on. Just red light on? There we are. Just for the commission's consideration, essentially the standard that you're looking for, it's not quite as clear when we're looking at something like a conditional use permit that has a set of criteria that you're required to meet. When you're looking at changing zoning, essentially what you're looking at is whether or not the proposed change would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And so as the applicant had stated the number of, obvious, if you travel across Schneider Avenue, there's quite a number of businesses, professional offices there. Just a cursory view of that street this morning, I believe within sight of the applicant's property to the east, there were 6 offices, professional offices within sight. And then to the west, there were 2 more just before you would reach Main Street that has, of course, 2 businesses there, the drugstore and then the small strip mall there that has the Zepp's Pizza and the dressmakers or the bakery there. So I think that in just the overall view that clearly the structure has been used as a business for quite a long period of time. When you drive by and you look at the property, it appears that it was designed to be set up as an office complex. So I just wanted to make sure the board knew the way a court would look at consideration of changing zoning.
Thank you, Tim. Anything else you want to add?
No. Thanks.
Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on behalf of this issue? Yes. Please come forward, speak directly into the microphone, and give your name and address.
Virginia, Geiger Biss, 305 Rosalind Street Southeast. I just had a couple questions that weren't addressed in here, but it sounds like it's professional business space, is that correct? Okay. Is the
You want to come up here so we can get your responses
yeah.
recorded?
Can I get your name again? And your name again, ma'am?
Virginia,
Last name?
Geiger Biss, Geiger, and then Biss. It just wasn't clear. So
Speak into the mic, please.
the apartment building is going to remain an apartment building, or is that also going to be a professional building?
I don't own the apartment building, so all I'm trying to do is get the 330 Schneider reclassed as an office building because that's what it is.
Oh, the Covey and Coons, the old Covey and Coons advertising?
Advertising.
Yeah, okay, that's all I wanted to know. And then, then that's not going to affect any taxes or property values?
It would be the administration's position that it will help property values. One
Right,
of the
that's what I
things,
just wanted to know.
yeah, vacant buildings and buildings that do not have any capital investment tend to bring down neighborhood
Right.
values. So we look at it as a positive if they want to put, 6 figures of investment into the property and then have tenants there that, help with eyes and ears,
Right,
professional offices.
sure,
We think
okay.
that's-
That's all I
Good.
wanted to know. It wasn't clear in here. And for whatever reason, I thought it was the apartment building too. No. Right, okay, I have that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you. No one else? Open it up to Martin. You want to address anything?
Oh, excuse me, it's all been fairly well addressed. Staff's in support. It makes sense. It seems to be compatible with the existing uses. The existing use will continue, and staff recommends approval.
Questions, comments from the commission?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, and I guess I don't know if it's a moot point or not, but I'm going to ask them. I know that this building has been there for a long time. I grew up on Willoway. I probably rode my bike in the parking lot of that building when I was a kid. And I also drove by, I also drove by, and again, to Mr. Berry's point, it says MCMLX11, which stands for, I guess, 1962, according to Google. So it has been there for a long time, and it has been it was originally a medical building. My question is, Was this simply a mistake on the map or a mistake with zoning? What was the zoning when it was built? Was it a mistake when it was built, an oversight when it was built? Or, so I guess my question is are we really changing the zoning, or are we identifying a mistake in the map or something else?
I would say we are changing the zoning to be consistent with what the use of the land is.
Okay.
It's hard to say whether it was a mistake. There's been many rewrites of the zoning ordinance over the, you say it's been there 60-some years? So it's hard to say.
Okay,
Yeah, it was built in 1955. It's
Okay.
on the
Yeah.
auditor's records.
okay,
Yeah,
So 64 years.
right.
yeah.
It says medical arts building on the front, like carved into the building, medical arts building. So I'm assuming, like you said, it was originally a
Right.
physician's office.
Right.
It was Dr. Andrea's office at one time, and it was Dr. Hendershot's office years ago. So it's always been an office building, to my knowledge.
Yeah, so
Never
we're
been
not talking about
residential.
a house that's been converted. You know,
No.
we're talking about a,
No, it was built specifically the way it is now, from our understanding. Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
The date of the map of survey for rezoning purposes is September 2019. You acquired the property in December of 2017. So there's a 2-year period. So did you buy the building knowing that the zoning was not conforming with the existing use?
No, I did not. I purchased it at an auction, and they had said that it had been used as an office building, and that they were, that you could use it as an office building. So
So nobody has lent on this property knowing that it's a non-conforming use?
I'm sorry.
There's no lender that has put money, has given you a mortgage on the property?
I use private
Okay.
lenders.
So it's
Yes.
private money, right?
Yes, private money.
Okay. So I was going to say, because if somebody missed that, then I think you've got some recourse
Sure.
if they misrepresented the facts.
Yeah.
So, what else was I going to ask? That's all I have for right now.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
Just one more, Danny, I'm sorry.
Sure.
Is there any chance that a variance was granted years ago for this property and we just don't have record of it?
Well, you're asking to go back, to the beginning of time to look. It's hard to say, but what would seem to me, and maybe this is perhaps speculation, but perhaps initially it was zoned as an office building, and somewhere along the way, the office use declined, and someone wanted to put in livable space in there, and then maybe had it changed to an R2F, because an R2F would allow some office space in it, and then that use has gone away, but once it was zoned as an R2F, there were other, I'll say obtuse regulations relating to somebody investing capital in this facility. As I understand it, there would be a limitation of approximately 50% of the value of the property that could be used towards renovating the office component to it. And I think that suggests why they've had difficulty selling it, perhaps some in the know, and that's not enough capital to turn this thing back into an office building. So I think that's one of the reasons that Mr. Van Gundy and myself looked at it, is that and I didn't even have the history, I'm glad that you guys brought it up, of what its original origins were, is that it's always been an office building. I would suggest that somebody changed it along the way to accommodate someone who wanted to live there.
Yeah, as far as a variance, Marty, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it would fit the conditions to grant a variance for use. Generally, if you grant a variance through the Zoning Board of Appeals, it's not for use, but it's more or less setbacks and allowing certain things within that area. Is that correct?
So there are two different variances. One is for use and one is for area. This would be a use variance, but given the history and where, you know, the projected use is headed, this is the more appropriate avenue of addressing the difference there.
And if indeed a variance was granted, and understand that we do maintain a list, it's not indicated that a variance was granted, changing the zoning here wouldn't impede that in any way. In fact, it would probably put it in a better position. This wouldn't be a property that was granted a variance, because generally for the use variance, and I guess more specifically for a use variance, what you're stating as part of your application is that there's something very unique about your property that prohibits it from doing what you're asking to do, and it would be unfair to apply kind of the broad brush rules that apply to that type of zoning to apply to your property because of its some unique type of factor. But here, having it zoned for the way it's being used, and as other properties are used around there, I think that's the more proper way to have it clearly done, and to give full value to the property and zone it correctly. So if years from now you wish to sell the property or lease it, it's zoned for its proper use.
I do have one other question that just came up.
Sure.
And I guess I'll, say that, I agree that this should be made into a business district of some sort or other. But I guess here's my question. Since we are technically now changing the zoning to business, do we now have to worry about whether or not it meets the requirements to be, even though it has been used, do we have enough parking spaces? Do we have to worry about that now before we change the zoning? Or is that a whole other conversation down the road?
Well,
I mean, I know it's existing, but.
yeah, parking is generally connected with use.
Right.
And if he changes the use in any way, shape, or form, expands, enlarges, or then that's going to trigger a relook at the parking. But
because it's existing, it's okay, is what you're saying?
because it's
Okay.
yeah, existing, it would be okay if he's just doing facade and other type upgrades. But if he wants to expand the size of the building, then that will trigger, another look at zoning.
And that was my thought. I just wanted to make sure we were
Sure.
checking everything before we change the zoning here.
How many parking spaces are there associated with the property at this time?
That's a great question. I haven't really thought of that. It's not marked, they're not lined, but the whole second parcel is
You have an
additional.
extra parcel as a part of the property.
Basically, the second parcel there that, I can't remember the name of the street, but.
Pershing.
Pershing, thank you. Up against Pershing is parking, and then there's gravel parking behind the building as well. So there's, I don't know, you could probably fit, just a guess, 50 to 75 cars, I'd guess. Is that right, or does that seem too much?
Maybe a little too much, but
Yeah.
do you plan on combining the two lots?
No, they're separate parcels now, so for my purposes, I don't, I might as well just leave them separate parcels. There's no real benefit, I don't think, to combining them,
Okay.
to me.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll
Oh,
make
go ahead.
a motion to approve the zoning classification to office building.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Yes.
Mr. Fleckner,
Yes.
Mr. Volas,
Yes.
Mr. Sarah,
Yes.
Mr. Dalpays,
Yes.
Mr. McLeister.
Yes.
Okay, this will then be forwarded, our recommendation will be forwarded to City Council, who will take the necessary steps to hold their own public hearing and address this issue. Thank you very much. Seeing not, well, one other thing we did include in the packet, the listed meeting dates for 2020. If you see any conflicts, as we did last year, we tried to avoid, even though it may not be the first Wednesday, if there's a conflict with a major holiday, the date would be in another week, but take a look at it if you haven't, and we can address that the next meeting or two. Seeing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. At this point, it's hard to say whether there will be anything forthcoming for a November meeting, but stay tuned and we will address it if something comes in. There are a couple things pending on preliminary discussions, but no plans have been submitted at this time, right, Martin?
That's correct.
Okay. We stand adjourned. Thank you.